And welcome back to the Exotic Pet Collective. My name is Richard, and we've got an exciting episode for you today. We've got the the photographer from the new book, Venomous Words. Is coming on. You probably know him from Instagram. He's got a pretty big following over there, does some amazing macro photography. You probably know him there by Venom Macro. So please welcome to the show, Gordon Riley. I hit the wrong button again. I'm not trying to say you're a joke. I wanted to give you an applause there. So thank you for coming on. It's a little bit different. We are just recording this all audio, no video for this interview because you appreciate your anonymity.
Yeah. I usually remain faceless. It's just a personal preference. It's all about the images for me, so I keep my face out of it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So many people, and I include myself in this. I mean, I don't like really having my face on camera. I prefer to just film tarantulas, but doing YouTube, it seemed people, they seem to get better views when they actually see a person. But with photography, that's a little different. I think it's kind of cool that you're staying kind of behind the scenes, behind the camera, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how long have you been doing macro photography?
I started about 3 years ago. I picked up my first camera and basically self-taught myself macro, if you will. I had a couple people from the community initially guide me in the right direction with, gear and certain aspects of the photography and, techniques. But for the most part, I was self-taught.
Very cool. And just because I know somebody's going to ask, what kind of camera gear do you use?
I use Canon gear. I use an R5 for the main portion of my photography. And I also have a EOS R that I like to put together for some of the 1 to 5X stuff, if I go a little bit further in the magnification. So
yeah.
I've got 2 camera setups at the ready because you never know. You never know when the images are going to present themselves. So changing lenses with invertebrates kind of that can be detrimental to an image. So because once it's there, they might move a couple seconds later. So you got to be quick.
Yeah, you do. I feel you there. And what kind of macro lens do you use?
I use a Canon 100 millimeter f2.8 L series. It's got in lens stabilization, so it makes it a little bit easier to do handheld shots, handheld stacks, if you will. I like their gear. It's a little bit heavier than some of the macro gear you might see from Olympus, but the Canon lenses and their glass is just amazing.
Yeah.
I also use an MPE lens, which is 65 millimeter, and that gives me the 1 to 5X magnification. It acts essentially like a microscope lens, if you will.
Very cool. Now, did you start keeping invertebrates and then get into macro photography, or did you get into macro photography and then start keeping inverts?
It started with keeping scorpions. I was keeping scorpions back in like 2000, 2002. And, so I've kept for quite a long time. And while I was keeping, there were certain aspects that I just wanted to, see a little bit more clear and, see some clarity with it, and certain things that I was seeing that I wanted to show other people. So, the photography aspect came into play, and I was able to show the world something different.
Yeah, I feel you there. And especially with scorpions, they sometimes can be so reclusive. It's nice to be able to take a photo of them and have it available anytime you want to see them and not have to wait days or weeks for them to come back out of hiding.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, obviously I do a lot of breeding as well. And, I do sell the babies on occasion when I do have surplus. But when I do that, I usually give 3-inch stickers of my macro photography just so people can use those on the adult tanks. So in case the species was hiding, you could actually see what was in the tank, on the image.
Yeah, that's cool.
So,
very cool. So, what was your first scorpion?
I started with the the standard Lyris conquestratus, which is the Deathstalker scorpion. I started with one of those and a couple Androctonus australis, which those are the yellow fat tails
Hmm.
that are basically infamous. But yeah, I started with some really really hot species because obviously I was like most keepers getting in. I was pretty naive with what I was getting. Luckily for me, as I started keeping, I was safe and I didn't have any mishaps with them. But it wasn't necessarily a good, two different good species to start with. Um, I should have started out with something a little bit less venomous, but yeah, I kind of jumped in with both feet.
Yeah, it sounds that way. So what would you say is your favorite scorpion to photograph?
Oh wow, there's so many. I really like the colors of uh, some of the Europlectes, like the Europlectes oliviasis is on the cover of the book. Um, just love the colors on them. The only complaint I have with that species is I wish they were a little bit bigger
Yeah,
because they're relatively a very very small species.
yeah. I don't think I've ever kept that species, but I don't have a whole
Yeah,
lot of scorpions. I mean, just kind
yeah.
of
It's
rough estimate. How many scorpions do you think that you keep?
right now I think I'm holding about 400 or 500. I
Oh
think
wow,
if you count everything, because well, I just have multiple broods, so
right.
multiple clutches. So, and every time something like that happens, your inventory is going to jump up like say 30 to 60. Um, the babies do account for a lot of it.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
but
about how many
I do keep
species? I guess would probably be a better way to ask that question.
over 40.
Yeah.
Last I counted, I think last I counted it was over 40 different species. I think it was 43 to be honest.
Yeah.
So,
Alright. So when you're photographing scorpions, and we'll talk about the book here in a second because I'm really excited to talk about that. I just wanted to get a little background information so people,
sure.
kind of know exactly what they're getting into when they start checking this book out. When you're photographing scorpions, what are some of the challenges that you seem that are like the hardest to overcome?
Well, it's like anything, and I'm sure you see it with the teas, the tarantulas. A lot of it is knowing the behaviors. Obviously you can't really predict where they're going to be and when they're going to be because it's more or less erratic. But after working with something for a while, you kind of get a tendency of what ticks them off and what doesn't. Each species has their own little thing. Whether they're going to bolt fast or whether they're not. And I just try to capitalize on that as best I can. So I do spend a lot of time observing them and getting all the little behavioral idiosyncrasies, getting those things down before I actually sit down in the photo shoot. Um, and that's basically how I do it. I mean, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I walk in there and I've got some high hopes for a photograph, and I walk out empty-handed. So,
Yeah.
it's a luck of a draw with live insects or live arachnids or whatever you might be photographing.
Yeah. Live animals in general, I think. it's
Yeah, yeah.
I
Well,
remember.
and that's why I have two cameras set up at the ready with the fusers, everything, because those split seconds mean a lot. And if you've got a good setup and the animal's right where you want it to be, you don't have time to change lenses. You don't have time to put batteries in your gear. You've got to be ready to get rock and roll when they give you the opportunity.
That's very true. Yeah, I've got a Lumix G9 set up, essentially just for photography. You have the diffuser on it, ready to go, if the opportunity ever presents itself. But it seems inevitably I'll be filming something and want a third camera in on it, and I'll take that apart, turn it into a video camera. I mean, which mainly is just kind of switching it from photo to video and changing the lens, and then I won't put it back together. And then I'll be feeding or doing some maintenance or something. I'm like, oh, this would be a great picture. And I go to grab it and I'm like, oh, I gotta kind of reset this up for macro photography. And by the time I've done that, whatever I wanted to photograph, they've gone into hiding or stopped doing whatever they're doing. And it's frustrating.
Yeah, yeah. Those moments are precious, man. And I mean, look at the netcasters. Because I know that you've done a lot with the netcasters here lately, and um, I know that other photographers have too. and it's everybody wants to catch that, one moment where that net caster throws the net and captures the prey. And
Hmm.
I mean, and that's, you got to sit there and wait. So it doesn't come up very easily.
Yeah,
So
that's probably why they say never work with children or animals because
y-
they don't take
yeah,
direction.
no, well, you never know where they're going to be. So it's kind of like, yeah, like I said, the luck of the draw.
Yeah. Now you got some really cool photos of your netcaster. I was kind of jealous and frustrated because I ordered two. I thought, that way I've got a 50-50 chance of getting
Yeah.
some good photos. One of them arrives. It died during the shipping process. So I opened it
Yeah.
up and its abdomen had ruptured. The other one I
Oh,
had for about a
wow.
week. I got a couple of good photos of it, and then it had like webbed up. It was kind of suspended, hanging, and it had built its little its web for casting. I dropped in
Hmm.
some crickets, watched it for about an hour. Nothing happened. I went to bed that night, came back the next morning, the crickets were gone, and then like 2 days later, it curled up and died. I was like devastated.
Oh,
So
wow.
now I
That's
have I
crazy.
have no, and I even talked to the guy I got him from and got a lot of advice
Yeah.
on how best to keep him. It wasn't like I don't know. It just it's like I just was kind of frustrated, and then I saw you post some
Yeah.
more pictures, and I was like, I guess his is doing well, so I can't get mad at the guy I got it from. It could just
No,
be.
and I had a couple of them sent to me too. The first two that, I think they're just very, very fragile with shipping. So, that was a big thing, that I noticed with them was, the first two didn't make it through shipping, and so I ended up getting another one, and that one's the one that I've been photographing.
Yeah.
She actually did an egg sac for us, which I was able to do like a short reel on her, spinning the egg sac, doing her thing. But that was like a cell phone because, I didn't have my camera ready. And see,
Hmm.
that's the fruits of having your camera ready. It just so happened that I caught her doing that, and my camera wasn't ready because I didn't plan on doing a photo shoot for that. But yeah, it's sometimes you catch them doing crazy things, and it's like, oh, I missed that one.
Yeah. Well, if
So
that egg sac becomes viable and you get some slings, you definitely have to
I
let me
hope so.
know.
You know what? This is, and I've seen a lot of spiders do their egg sacs, true spiders, tarantulas. This has to be the most perfect s- spherical orb that I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, wow.
It's very, very different from other egg sacs because I mean, this thing is just like, it looks like she like hung a bowling ball
Yeah.
essentially.
That's
That's
pretty
basically what
wild.
it looks like. It's that perfect. It looks like a bowling ball, but she actually went down and grabbed some debris from the substrate and tried to attach, and she attached stuff like wood to the sides of the egg case. It's pretty funny. So I guess apparently I gotta act like I didn't see it. I guess I don't know. So
That's funny. Yeah, they're an interesting. We're talking about for people that aren't familiar, like the ogre face spider. There's a lot of different names for it. Very very
yeah,
cool. They're from Cameroon, I believe, African.
Cameroon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Cameroon, and
So
yeah, I was when I was planning on trying to get some super slow motion of it, casting its net and trapping that prey. But one of my worries was while researching the species, I learned that they like their retinas, I believe, are extremely sensitive because they see so well at night. When the sun comes up at dawn, it actually like burns their retinas, and they have to regrow them for the next night. Have you?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They actually reabsorb their retinas and regrow their retinas every day. It's amazing. Yeah, it's weird. Um, Never would have known that. So yeah, obviously I had to keep the light off of the netcaster. Keep the light down kind of low, and just hope my cell phone could pull some light in because it was pretty dark in that room actually. So
Yeah, yeah, and then when you're shooting video, especially at high frame rates to get it in slow mo, that really reduces the amount of light that's hitting the sensor. So
yeah,
typically, if when I'm recording tarantulas or something, I have some pretty powerful lights to kind of
yeah,
counteract that. But in this situation, I didn't want to do that because I didn't want to blind the spider right before it
yeah,
cast its net or something. I was like, because then it'll never work. So I had like the ISO pumped up, so it'd have been pretty grainy. But this new GH6 that I got has some cool like low light features. I don't think it's technically night vision, but it had some cool, dynamic range boosts and stuff like that. So I had the minimal light as possible, to still have like a halfway decent image, and
Yeah,
just
yeah,
burn up so much. I mean, I ended up erasing it, but I mean, it was like an hour. I had the camera rolling, pointed at the enclosure, and like even walked away to try it. Maybe if I give her some space, she'll
oh
feel more
yeah,
comfortable. And then I'm,
yeah.
kind of reviewing the footage, and it's like, yeah, she didn't do a daggone thing the entire time, but hang there.
Yeah, see, people don't realize the efforts that we go through to coax some of these animals to do their thing because, you know, I- in the 3 years that I've been doing macro photography and photographing invertebrates, one thing that I've noticed and one thing always stands true is you never tell an invertebrate what to do, you ask it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't want to do it and sometimes it does and you just got to hope that you're ready for it.
Yeah, yeah. Anytime I'm filming scorpions or tarantulas, it feels more like a wrangler than anything. It's like
Yeah, basically, yeah.
I'm
Yeah, that's
trying to,
essentially what you're doing.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a I feel like what you do is kind of a thankless job in a lot of ways. Because I mean, there's some amazing photographs that you're posting on Instagram and that you have in this book that just came out. But I see, I love, or I used to love Instagram before they kind of switched over to a TikTok format. But I loved photography, and it seems like if you're posting pictures of geckos or reptiles or cute little fuzzy animals, like jumping spiders even. They blow up. People get really excited. They like them. It gets pushed out to a lot of different accounts. And the scorpions, though, I mean, you probably put more work and effort into photographing scorpions than people do, snakes or geckos or some other reptile. But that doesn't get
Yeah, but
near the amount of attention.
yeah, arachnids I've seen, except for jumping spiders, arachnids really get vilified and it's hard to get any kind of following for any kind of arachnid photography. I I noticed early on that a lot of the other macro photographers were mainly focusing in on like flies. They were doing insects and subjects that were a little bit more had a little bit more dimension to them. Whereas scorpions, they're very very terrestrial. So there's not too much you can do with them as far as like trying to manipulate the placement of the shot. So I mean, essentially what you're left with is lateral views, ventral views, or lateral views and horizontal views, of the species themselves.
Hmm.
Whereas like, you get a fly. I mean, you take a picture of a fly or something else that's sitting on a leaf. You've got a little bit more dimension to it for the macro photography, and the composition is generally a little bit better. But for scorpions, it's hard to really compose a well done shot. So
Yeah, it's very true, and I feel your frustration in that. It seems like there's this one guy I follow on Instagram and YouTube, Stewart Wood. I believe he's over in the UK or Europe somewhere. I think he's British. Are you familiar
uh,
with him at all?
I haven't seen his stuff. No.
Yeah, he mainly does. He works with Laowa a lot, and features a
Okay.
lot of their lenses and things of that nature. But he mainly works with jumping spiders, just a
Oh,
bunch of different species, and he's got like little tiny cards for backgrounds, and like his YouTube videos are pretty much just showing how to set up a spider, like on a pine cone or something like that with a backdrop,
oh
and
yeah,
get these cool
yeah.
photos.
It takes a lot. It takes a lot. It takes more than what most people would think. And a jumping spider, I for the longest time I was like, okay, well, jumping spiders are kind of the macro photographer's pinnacle because they don't sit still for anybody.
No,
And for you to get a good stack off of a jumping spider, it's not very easy. It's a very very hard thing to accomplish.
yeah,
Um, so that's why a lot of times you'll see jumping spider photos with, say, a fly in its mouth or something like that, because 10 to 1, that's the only way they could have gotten them to sit still was feeding them. So,
yeah. And they're so curious. Like anytime I try photograph of mine, they spend most of the time on the lens. Like, they see
oh
the
yeah,
lens get close to them, they just jump onto it. It's like, come on.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like they're fascinated by the lens that's looking at them.
Yeah. And one of the ways they cheat, especially with jumping spider photos, and I'm not gonna lie, I've done that a few times. Like I did it with the ogre face spider, the one that arrived dead. I kind of like displayed it out and took some macro photos of it. I think you're the only one
Yeah.
that caught it. You were like, that spider's not alive. It's like that's true. um,
Well, yeah. I mean, with macro photography, you can tell with some of the graying of the eyes. You notice certain things, and it's basically just a macro photographer would know because they've been in that position. But yeah, and I've done it too. And sometimes when you end up with like a dead specimen, or say something that just recently had passed away, that's probably a really, really good time to get some really tight shots if you have the equipment to do it.
yeah,
Um, you know, it's I like doing it with on the occasion that I do have a dead specimen. I like to do that just to see the finer details. Obviously because at that point they're not moving anymore, so
yeah.
you can really kind of hone in on it.
I mean, I've seen guys, and they were already dead, but especially with jumping spiders, and they just kind of stick a little pin through the abdomen, and then have that on a clip so it's kind of suspended, and then take a photo of the spider. So if you don't know, that jumping spider looks alive. It looks like a really cool photo, but it's like the
Yeah.
subtle difference. Like you said, the eyes is usually where I can tell. I'm like that's a cool photo, but that is a dead spider.
Yeah, because the eyes start getting like a metallic look to them, and then they start graying over a little bit.
Yeah,
At that point, you can pretty well tell that the spider's probably been deceased for maybe about, I don't know, 24 hours or so, or
yeah.
12 hours.
I did
But
one
um,
jumping spider, and it drove me. Like I took all these photos, and I didn't notice it. I couldn't see it like with the naked eye, and I didn't even see it through the like while I was taking the photos. But when I got him into the Lightroom and was editing them, there was just a little speck of dirt on its eye. It's like if that was alive, there would not be that dirt there. So I had to like try to go in and Photoshop that out.
yeah, and see that's the thing is they always clean themselves too, so they're always very, very. Um, I guess they're notorious for sitting there using their front pedipalps to clean off their eyes or do something else. But yeah, that's one of the most amazing things I think you could actually see with macro photography is jumping spiders' eyes, because that's not something that people normally see.
Yeah.
So you know they like looking at them because they're a cute version of a spider. um, I don't know if have you ever seen that thing that was on the internet, Lucas the Spider?
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, which I mean that thing was it ended up that cartoon ended up being huge, and
Yeah,
it's just about a jumping spider.
yeah.
So,
Yep. My kid or my granddaughter loves that. She calls it the piter. And she enjoys it. I tried to show her, like, I have some jumping spiders, and she didn't find them as fascinating as the cartoon, probably because it wasn't talking in a high pitched voice. But yeah,
yeah,
jumping spiders are cool. They're cool to photograph, and I like them. But I think that the work you've been doing with scorpions and other inverts like that aren't as popular and aren't as cute, I guess, is
yeah.
pretty amazing.
Well, that's the thing is I figure it is, from a photography standpoint, if you bring it to people, maybe they'll take the time to take a look at it. I just wanted to be able to show people what these animals look like up close, and be able to do it to where they can enjoy the colors, they can enjoy all the fine details of it, and they don't have to worry about keeping. They
Yeah.
can just view the images, and if they want to delve into that fear that they might have of arachnids, they can, or they can simply enjoy the photo for what it is.
Yeah. And even people that keep them, macro photography like really opens up a whole nother world. That's what got me into it is I kept tarantulas for a long time and was taking
Yeah,
pictures of them with my cell phone. And then I got a camera and was taking pictures of them. But when I got that first macro lens and started learning to use it, I was seeing things on tarantulas that I had never noticed before because, maybe it was just so small or seemed
yeah,
insignificant at the distance of, just eyesight. But I mean,
yeah,
just
yeah,
the way the eyes are shaped and the hairs, the way that, especially like on a tarantulas, the hair of the carapace, to me,
yeah,
it looks like green bottle blues kind of got like this cool fuzzy looking carapace or something. But under macro photography, there's like waves to the hair and all kinds of cool little details you would never have noticed.
yeah. And it's funny. 3 years ago, I picked up my first macro, camera, and here I am expecting to get these awesome images, and So I pick up the camera and I, got my photo shoot ready and click off my first picture. I'm looking at it. I'm like, wait a minute, this doesn't look anything like what this. So, I mean, and of course, after that, I had to start learning all the techniques and stacking and, really
Hmm.
get into the whole f-stop thing. And, depth of field was huge. Um,
Yeah.
so, I had to really, really understand a lot of that. I didn't know any of that stuff when I picked up the camera. I had no idea what depth of field was and how to stack images or how to do any of that stuff. So
Yeah.
it
I
was
mean,
definitely a heavy learning curve.
yeah, I feel you. I started off the same way. And I mean, when I got my first like actual mirrorless camera, I didn't, I almost refused to learn any of that stuff. I was like, I don't really care about what the aperture is or what the ISO setting. I just had everything on auto and was recording that
Mhm.
way. And that's also how I took photos. I didn't even use a flash at first. It was just all auto. And I was getting so frustrated because I'm like, my depth of field is so shallow and the images are so grainy. And it was kind of like, I wanted to have better photography and better video, and it got to the point,
Yeah.
it's like, "Okay, I just gotta learn this stuff because it's,
Yeah.
that's what's holding me back." And I get frustrated
Yeah.
when people reach out to me and they're like, "Your images or your footage is so amazing. What camera are you using?" And it's just like and that was what I started off, talking to you about because I knew that's what people were gonna be asking. But
Yeah.
I just wanna make the point that in a lot of ways, it doesn't matter. I feel like what camera you're
No.
using is maybe 10% of kind of the equation. It's the skills that
Yeah.
you develop, whether you're using a Canon or a Lumix or an Olympus or a Sony,
Oh, absolutely.
it's the
Yeah.
skills,
Because I mean, the R5 is Canon's flagship camera right now, and you would think that you pick it up and you'd be able to snap off these pictures with high quality gear. I mean, that's Canon's best camera. And when you pick up the camera and you finally realize that there's a lot of different techniques that you have to employ to make that macro image the image, it's you really, really need to know your gear. And it's the equipment. The equipment means, like you said, about 10%. Everything else is how the photographer manages aperture, light, ISO, all these different things. Um, and to be quick about it because obviously situations change, especially with what we do with live invertebrates. Obviously the aperture, depending on the, I guess, how the animal's sitting, the aperture changes, the ISO might change, everything changes about the image. So I've got mine to where I can just spin a dial real fast on a lens, or and it's really, really quick. So I can make those quick adjustments to where I don't miss that image if it does present itself.
Yeah. I'm sure Canon has this as well, just because it's such, at the top of the line. But the Lumix cameras that I use have hotkeys. I don't know if that's what
Yeah,
they officially call them, but I can, set it up, have all these settings, and save it to a key or to a button essentially. And I think depending on which camera I have, there's anywhere between 2 to 5. And so, like, if I'm in a situation, I don't have to worry about going through all the settings. I can just hit one of the presets that I kind of designed, and it's ready to
yeah,
go and shoot this type of video or
exactly.
shoot this type of picture. And I find that really helpful. It's like, how did I
Yeah, yeah.
live without this?
Yeah, presets are a wonderful thing, especially if I mean, because the ambient light that I always have in my room, it never changes. So at that point, I know my flash power might go up, but my ISO always stays at 100. I never go over 100 ISO.
Yeah.
Because when you get into the macro aspect of it and you really blow up these pictures and you're trying to get that fine detail, any kind of noise into the image really kind of destroys it. So yeah, I like to keep my ISO down low, and I'll just boost my flash power up if I have to, and just hope for the best.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, one thing I like to tell people, when they're asking questions about gear is, if you hire a carpenter to build a house or, a cabinet or something like that, it doesn't really matter if he's using DeWalt or Milwaukee or, whatever brand power tools he's got. Like, you're not concerned about that. You're concerned about his skills and ability and experience. So, I mean, I feel
yeah,
like, and I fell into that trap when I first started getting into cameras. Like, I started with a Lumix G7 and I wanted sharper, better quality photos. And instead
Yeah.
of being like, well, I need to learn more, I was like, I just need to get a better camera with, more megapixels on the sensor. So I went with the G9, and that didn't fix the problem. It's like, but it's like I didn't learn. I'm shooting. I'm like, well, I'm doing more video than photography, so I need a more video centric camera. So I got a G5,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
was like it had all these really cool options and settings, but if you don't know how to use them, they're worthless. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it can get frustrating. But it's a
Yeah. It
trap I think
absolutely
people
can.
fall into when they get into
No,
photography. It's like
it,
that gear acquisition syndrome. Like I got to get the newest thing that'll make me a better photographer.
yeah, it's totally a trap. I've seen guys do amazing stuff with older cameras that don't even have half the megapixels that I'm shooting with. Um, and it's just their techniques. I mean, some of these guys, the older macro photographers, I mean, they're doing amazing things with like older cameras, and they don't need the megapixels because the megapixels they help out if you crop in. It reduces the obviously the spread of each pixel if you crop in, so your images are going to remain sharp. But a lot of people don't realize that the equipment isn't going to help you with the depth of field and and everything that you have to set up prior to taking the shot. And I think setup is one of those things where a lot of people overlook the setup of what the photograph is going to be.
Yeah.
Um, and
You mean like the composition?
it's Yeah, so
Okay.
when you're setting up your photograph, when you're doing a composition, or you've got in your head exactly what you want to shoot and how you want to shoot it. I have a tendency to set up my camera that way, and I'll do a couple test shots before I even put the animal out, on the deck, and that way I've got my light, I've got my white balance, I've got everything going for me, and now all I've got to do is introduce the animal into the situation and see what happens.
Yeah.
And being properly set up for the session, and just being on top of it as much as you can, it helps me be a little bit more successful, more times than none. But I mean, and that being said, there's many times that I walk in that room and end up walking out empty handed with nothing on the card. So
Yeah.
you know
It's frustrating. Yeah, I had somebody sent me some very cool tarantula jewelry. Like, they had to make these casts and they poured, I think it was copper or something like that. It's kind of metal. But to make the casts for that, they 3D printed some tarantulas, and I'm not going to go through that whole process. But when they sent me the jewelry, they also sent me the 3D models that they used. That was just plastic. And now
Oh
I
wow.
use those as the kind of like a placeholder or stand-in when I'm
Gotcha.
setting
Yeah.
up the
Yeah.
lights and the flash and everything. I'll grab
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
little fake plastic tarantula that's similar in size and set it on there and use that until everything's kind of dialed in, and then I'll swap
Oh
it out
yeah.
with a real one.
That's perfect because I mean, with the size comparison, you get your depth of field right there. So,
Yeah,
at least you could see it. I mean, at that point, you can make a decision. Okay, well, this is going to be a single shot image capture, or I might have to stack two or three here to make it look, relatively good. So,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of different things. When people set up their their shoot, that I think that's one of the best things you can do is do like a preliminary shoot, and then even when I take the animal out and I have the animal, in situ when I'm gonna shoot, I'll hit them with a flash just to see how they react, and
yeah,
that's prior to me taking the catch cup off because usually what I do is I'll sit them down and and they'll be catch cupped to where obviously if they're going to bolt, they're not going to go very far. And I do that for animal safety and my own safety. Um, the animal safety is obviously the most paramount thing because I mean, they're good enough to allow me to image them. But, I'll hit them while they're under a catch cup just to see what they're going to do under a flash because different things act different ways when they're hit with extreme light. And arachnids, most of them are nocturnal. So you hit them with light, the chances are they're probably going to run. But I've been pretty successful, and as long as I do a test flash, I seem to be on the mark. So
yeah, yeah. I mean, your photography speaks for itself. It's you got some amazing images. Um,
oh,
I,
thank you.
I did want to talk quickly since you brought it up about flash. I think that's something that a lot of people just getting into macro photography, especially of inverts, don't take into consideration, or I mean, I know I didn't. I'll just speak for myself. I didn't understand the importance of the intensity of the flash, the diffusion, which is like kind of passing it through a translucent material to kind of soften the harsh edges and stuff. And I learned through
Yeah,
embarrassment, I guess, through humiliate. Like I would post a picture that I was really proud of. I didn't like it didn't look the way I wanted it to when I would compare it to other macro photos that I enjoyed, but for what I like, I was like, this is the best picture I've put out so far. And then there would
yeah,
be other photographers in the comments like, hey, you should really use this type of diffusion and stuff like that. And so I mean, they weren't trying to be mean; they were trying to be helpful. But
yeah.
that's how I learned. But what kind of diffusion? Like, how do you diffuse the light or the flash when you're a photographer or photographing these animals?
Well, I do two things. So, I work with on-camera flash and off-camera flash. So, which obviously most people do. That's but when I'm on camera, I use what's called a MK diffuser, and it's designed by a friend of mine. His name's Marcus Cam, and it's basically a hood. If you were to look at it, that covers the flash, and it it diffuses it by spreading the flash out to where it's not going to burn the subject in one particular spot. So, and by burn, I mean the hot spots you'll see, like where if you're photographing a scorpion or beetle that has, an exoskeleton that's highly reflective, you'll see like, the very top portion of their exoskeleton will be kind of like whited out a little bit where the flash kind of burned that image a little bit. So the fusion really helps with taking those burned areas away, and it evens the light out, over the subject versus, all those little harsh spots, those hot spots,
Yeah.
if you will.
Yeah, I mean, for people that aren't photographers and have no clue what we're talking about, just kind of imagine, like, you got your cell phone out and you're trying to take a picture outside, and you kind of like focus in on the person. So
Yeah,
the camera adjusts automatically so that the person is properly exposed, but you'll notice that like the sky there's no
yeah,
detail in it at all. It's just like completely white. So that's kind
yeah,
of it blows out the sky. So when we're doing macro photography, sometimes the flash where it reflects, especially on scorpions, because
yeah.
they're kind of shiny and reflective. It can blow
Some
it
are
out,
some
and
are
there's no
worse
way
than
to edit
others.
it. Yeah, if
Yeah.
there's no detail in there, there's no way to like reduce it and get that back.
Yeah, it takes all the detail away. So basically what you did is, all that detail, all that information that is in that one little location of that image is now gone. So there's no way to even bring it back in post. I've tried numerous times, because I've had some images that were really, really good, but they've had some burn spots, and I was like, man, I just was a little off the mark here. Um, that does happen, so sometimes, I'll do on camera flash where the flash is actually sitting on top of the camera on the hot shoe, which is right there on top of the camera.
Hmm.
Um, and then for some of the body shots that I do, I'll shoot light across, above the subject, um, not on the subject itself, but across the top of it. So, a lot of a lot of diffusion and a lot of like how light falls really means a lot to an image. The light's going to continue on. So, but what you're trying to do is you're trying to manipulate how the light is falling on the subject, which is a very hard thing to do. So, it's all angles. It's like playing pool,
Yeah,
playing pool with the camera.
yeah, I feel that. And just to kind of put it in layman's terms for people with a real world example, they may be able to understand. It's kind of like imagine having a flashlight and pointing at a white wall. You're going to get like a
Exactly.
nice little round circle that's just the intense light. But if you put a
Yeah.
paper towel in front of the light bulb or in front of the flashlight, it will diffuse that light. Now it's not just a
Yeah.
sharp circle on the wall. It's just more spread out, more balanced. It's duller,
Exactly.
but it's more even.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. So
So
it's tricky trying to like figure that out and not being classically trained or formally trained, I guess is a better way. Like a lot of it for me was watching YouTube videos and trial and error, and I'm still
oh
learning,
yeah.
still trying to figure that stuff out.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and a lot of times when I'm photographing, I'll actually underexpose the image just, because you never know how that exoskeleton's really going to work with the light. So I prefer to be slightly underexposed than say I'd rather be underexposed than overexposed.
I feel you.
Um, I could always raise up the exposure in post. So, and what I mean by that is after the image is already taken, I can use like Lightroom or Photoshop and just raise the exposure just a little bit. It doesn't change the image, but what it does is it changes how light the image is, how much light you're bringing into the image. So yeah, and the detail is still there because if it's underexposed, it's still there. It's not burned away.
Yeah.
Like if you would with a hotspot.
Right. Now, do you shoot in RAW, like
Yes.
exclusively?
Yeah. Exclusively in RAW. So obviously for me, because I do shoot in RAW, and for those that don't know, RAW is a style where uh, the image isn't going to have as much vibrant color when you initially take it, but it's going to have more information that you can later manipulate in post. So when you shoot in RAW, you end up with more detail than you would with any other style, say, format.
Like a lot
Um,
more information. Like when you compare the file
yeah,
size to a JPEG and to a RAW, it's
yeah,
sometimes 5 times as much, sometimes more.
exactly. So yeah, I mean, it gives you a lot to play with. It gives you a lot of wiggle room, and bringing the colors back in post is very, very easy. And as long as you follow the histogram, it'll tell you what your thresholds are for your blacks, your whites, uh, your highlights and stuff like that. So essentially, the image isn't changing. The colors are already there. You're just bringing them forward. Um, you're never really changing, the color of the image or enhancing it so much that it looks stupid. I've seen a lot of imagery, especially with some of the Metallicas, and I'm sure you've seen it too, where it's oversaturated,
Seen it.
so
I've been
enhanced that
guilty of
it's
it.
well, I mean, we all have because I mean, they're such a beautiful species. I mean, they're such a beautiful species, and everybody wants to see that blue. But in all actuality, when you're looking at those with your human eyes, you don't see the blue the same way the camera does.
Yeah.
So it's slightly different, when you view it through the camera and versus the human eye. So
Yeah. I mean, I've got a P Metallica right here next to my desk. She's walking around and she's more gray right now than she is blue. So it's like
yeah, yeah,
it can be, and that's why when I'm photographing tarantulas specifically, I usually wait until right after a molt because that seems to be when their colors are the most vibrant. When they're
oh
when they're
yeah,
getting close to pre-molt, sometimes they're so dull. The only way to make them look like they do at their peak is to oversaturate the image, but that it rarely works. It's like it may bring out the blues, but then it also like when you oversaturate, it kind of sometimes will put like a pinkish hue to the whites or some kind of weird gold color to a brown, and it's like okay, that does not look natural at all.
yeah, and where you can see it isn't necessarily the subject, but if you look off and you look into the composition of where the subject was placed, you'll see it on like the background where you'll see okay the heavy saturation. It's pretty obvious at that point, but
Yeah, that leaf is not
yeah,
naturally
I mean
neon
some
green.
right. So and then I've also had problems with like say the more translucent animals that I've photographed. Because there's certain scorpions that are translucent. They look very like see through, and one of the things that I've noticed with photographing them is I really really had to pay attention to how the light is being reflected off the other things that are in my room because the camera will actually pick up the light reflections coming back into the scorpion's exoskeleton. So like say if I had something blue that was sitting on the table and the light reflected off of that, it's now on the scorpion, even though it wasn't even in the composition of the shot.
Yeah.
So it's little things like that where you really kind of have to hide that light to get, um, it's comedy when you sit down and you think you're good. And then all of a sudden something stupid, like something blue sitting on the desk, just ruined your shot and it wasn't even part of the composition. So
Yeah. I laugh because I've been battling with that recently. Like this week, I've been doing a lot of photography and video of Tarantula Cribs Enclosures. He hired me to do
Yeah.
some photos for his website, product photos for his website, and
For Tarantula Cruise, right?
yeah, yeah. So
Right on.
working with the acrylic can be very because it reflects, and it's like it to my naked eye, it looks like it's a well lit image, and I'll take a picture of it
Yeah.
and then get on the computer and look at it, and I'll see that it's actually reflecting some of the enclosures. So I've like had to like build this black wall, like kind of like in a room within a room, and have like the
Yeah.
camera lens poking through a black piece of cardboard just to
Yeah. I
get
mean,
those reflections from to stop. But at the same time,
yeah.
I'm also using lights that are like pretty far away, but
Mhm.
so that they aren't casting. They're not because it has a black background or something. Because we wanted it to just essentially he wanted the product to pop and not have a bunch of
Yeah.
distracting stuff in the background. So it's got a black background, and sometimes I would shine a blue light on it, and that would show up on the background. So I have to kind of angle them away, and I'm essentially what you were just talking about, trying to avoid. I'm trying to employ, like I'm
Yeah.
trying to get that light
Yeah.
to reflect off there subtly, so that it kind of gives it's because they're clear enclosures, so sometimes they can just blend right into the background. So trying to balance that
Yeah.
can be
I was
it's a trick.
I was told long ago when I first got into this by, one of my friends. He goes by Macro Bryce on Instagram. His account's amazing. He does a lot of jumping spiders, does a lot of field work. He takes these amazing pictures. And he chooses to do a lot of his photography in the field versus studio work. Which there's two different kinds of macro photographers. Usually field and studio. Um, but he told me long ago that light diffusion it's like an ongoing journey. When you think you're there, you're not even close. So it's like it always seems to change, and it's like you pick up these techniques for certain shoots that you do, and you pick up a technique and you think you got it down, and then you go to move on to something else, and next thing you know, you're revamping how you were doing it.
Yeah.
So
I have a lot of
it's
respect for photographers that work out in the field because anytime we'd go camping or take a little weekend vacation, cabin out in the woods, I'd bring my macro setup and with the intention of like I'm gonna get out and I'm gonna get some photos of these insects out in the woods. And to do
yeah.
that, you usually got to get up at sunrise, because that's like when they're
Oh,
kind of the most calm.
yeah, yeah. Get them when the dew hits them, because when they're cold, they're not going to be moving around as much. So I know a lot of the guys, they go out during like early morning, like you said. Um, but the crazy thing is like you could spend hours out there and you might not even find something cool, and
Yeah,
people don't realize how many hours that photographers actually spend on doing the field work. So you're right. I mean, hands down to those guys. Kudos to the guys that do the field work. I mean, some amazing stuff. Like Aaron Mollenkamp goes by Nightfall Photography on Instagram. I mean, his stuff. I don't know how he does it, but he's got some of the best flying, like in flight bees, and I don't know how he does it
it's always
because he shoots in
impressive.
that. Yeah, I mean, the guy shoots in manual, so it's not like it's autofocused. I mean, even the best cameras, I don't think can autofocus on something that tiny. But I mean, his in-flight bee images are just breathtaking.
Yeah,
So
I think I've seen some of
if
those.
anybody, yeah, I mean, if anybody wants to check him out, yeah, look up Nightfall Photography on Instagram. Is he's one of the best in the world, yeah, hands down, one of the best.
Yeah, well, I'm not a morning person, so I would usually do it once, get up early, take some photos, or not, and get frustrated. Like this was not worth getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to sleep in the rest of our trip. The one place we went, I had a lot of luck was here in West Virginia. There's a botanical garden, a couple maybe like
Oh,
an
right
hour and a
on.
half away, and it's just like a bunch of trails, and they've got all kinds of cool plants planted all along the trail, and it's just there's butterflies and beetles and all. I mean, there's just bugs everywhere. So it was like
Yeah,
I look like a crazy person because I'm there with my family, and I've got the camera with the big macro lens, and then like the hood macro diffuser, and carrying all that around my neck, and people are like, "What is that guy got?"
oh
Uh,
yeah, it looks totally weird when somebody sees a macro setup.
yeah,
So
you're like laying prostate on the ground, like just all spread out, trying
yeah.
to get a picture of this bug on a blade of grass. Is that guy
Oh
okay?
yeah.
So I prefer
The
working
struggle.
in the studio, so to speak.
Yeah, oh no, me too. I've always been a more of a studio photographer. I've done some stuff in the field, but I mean, for me, I think people would enjoy seeing more of the showcase images. I mean, I like to isolate the animal, kind of show off the animal for what they are, and the in situ images. I get it. They look beautiful, but for me, I just kind of like showcasing the animal and showing what the animal is.
Yeah.
So that's why a lot of my images you'll see are like reflective backgrounds, or say the black backdrops or something like that. I just trying to isolate the animal and give them center stage, if you will.
Yeah, and you did an amazing job on this book that just came out, Venomous Words, and that's a collaboration between you and Jeff Oliver. Do you want to
Yes,
maybe
sir.
just kind of explain a little bit, like how this concept came about and what exactly this book is?
Well, basically, what this is, it's dark lyrical poetry fused together with my macro images, and each one of the poems were created for the images themselves. And we've got multiple collaborators on in the book. So, and the way we did it, we did like we left openings for like 8 collaborators. So basically, 8 people could collaborate with Jeff in writing the poem. 8 legs, 8 collaborators. So it made sense to us.
I
Um,
love that.
but what we did, yeah, just little things like that, to make it kind of special. Um, but what we did is we paired each one of my images with his dark lyrical poetry, and I ghosted the images from the previous page. So you'll see a ghosted image and you'll see the poem, and then when you turn the page, you'll actually see it keeps you going. It's like a premonition of the next image, if you will. But it's funny how this came about, man. I never would have expected it to turn into a book. I'm glad it did. I think it's awesome. Um, I had contacted Jeff probably back in August. I think it was back in August, and I just wrote him on Instagram, said, "Hey, look, I've seen some of your poetry, and I think it just matches really, really well with my imagery." And I wanted to do, like, say, some collabs on maybe just a few posts on Instagram. But once Jeff got into my Insta, he saw my images. He kind of was set on doing the whole book thing, and I'm glad he was. So yeah, it just turned out really, really good.
Yeah. And you sent me a copy, and I've been, received it yesterday, and I've been looking over it, and it's just, I don't even know the right word to describe it. I don't have any other books like this in my collection, and I have a lot of books. But it is cool because it's, you open it up and there's, a little poem, and, with like like you said, a ghosted image of some kind of arachnid, a spider, a scorpion or something, kind of behind the words. But then on the other page, so like the poem would be on the left-hand side, the right-hand side, you've got this beautiful macro photo. Like right now I'm looking at the Walkeneri. I'm probably mispronouncing that. The hill is
Oh
Walkeneri.
yeah, the jumping.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just there's really no way to describe the quality of the photos. The it's printed on this very thick, heavy paper. So like the color saturation is beautiful. The images are extremely sharp. Like, I mean, before we started recording, I was saying, like, if it wasn't in this nice book, I would be really tempted to cut these out and frame them, because it's just like it's very high quality, and it's very enjoyable to look at. And you've got scorpions and tarantulas, mantises, jumping spiders. I mean, all kinds of different inverts in here. So
Yeah, I didn't want to just settle for one. I didn't want to leave something out, so I kind of tried to go all the way around the horn with the as much as I could get. So
yeah, and you had sent me a PDF version a while ago, and I was looking at it, and that tiger beetle portrait that you had. Like, I was impressed with it looking at it on my computer screen, but seeing it in person on this, in this book, like it's a whole other level of clarity and beauty. Like, And I have a
Thanks, man.
pretty expensive monitor for editing videos, so I was like, it can't be much better than this,
That's awesome.
$2,000
Thanks, man.
screen. But yeah, it definitely is. So it's very cool. So
Appreciate
how
that.
long did it take you guys to put this book together?
You know, that's a compilation of basically the last 3 years. So I took a lot of the good images, and we were very, very careful, trying to find the images that, would work best with the book. So, Jeff selected some, I selected some, and then he would write the poems to go with the images themselves. Um, it took a while. We started this back in August. We had a couple hiccups with it, just with, the publishing and getting the images correct, in the proper format and on the right paper, because that means a lot. So it was released. It was released a little while ago, and when I received a copy, because they didn't send any proofs when they originally did it, which that was problematic for us because obviously I care a lot about how my images look, and this book was a big deal to me. Um, when I did get the book, I noticed that the image quality wasn't there, and it was mainly because the paper that they used was 70-pound paper, it's uncoated. Um, I had to put an end to it. So I had that edition pulled off the shelves and went back to the drawing board and did it myself, basically. The publisher was unable to do it. So I grabbed the bull by the horns and did it myself. And it turned out good. It's just,
Yeah.
you use the proper paper and format things the right way, and it takes on a totally different life.
Yeah, I feel you. It's a very cool book, and it's definitely not one that's going to go on my shelf. Like it's more of a coffee table piece. Something I want people to see when they come over. I can't keep it on my
Well,
coffee table right now because I got a toddler running around. It would turn into a
well,
coloring
well.
book real quick. But
Oh yeah. Well, like you said, it's very, very different from any books that than anybody's ever seen, because this is the first of its kind. Um, it's got some really, really good reviews on Amazon. It's if anybody wants to check it out, it's on Amazon. Venomous Words. Um, but it's very, very different. I don't think anybody's paired macro photography with poetry, or kind of stepped into that realm
yeah,
of what you can do, with collaborations like that. So we were kind of the first with it. I haven't seen anything like it elsewhere. But
me
it
neither.
seems like everybody seems to enjoy it. So
Yeah, and I like collecting books about, inverts. I mean, I got a whole bunch. Essentially, I just scroll through Amazon when I'm bored sometimes, or, hit up local bookshops. And if I see any book that is about tarantulas or mantises or scorpions or anything, I end up buying it, reading through it real quick and then put it on the shelf and it collects dust. And,
yeah,
one of
yeah,
the things that's been really frustrating for me is that, sometimes these books are expensive. Like there's a couple tarantula
yeah,
books I got that were 150, $200. And, you get them in and the information's good, but the photos are, yeah, they're not very sharp. They're kind of blurry. It sometimes are just
yeah,
like, they almost look like somebody just took them with a cell phone, and it's just like, this isn't the
yeah,
art that I was looking for. I enjoy, I mean, I can read. I'm not saying I only buy books for the pictures, but when you're talking about a tarantula and all of its different aspects and features, as far as like the colors and the hairs and stuff like that, and you have a picture next to it, it's frustrating to not be able to see that because it's so pixelated.
yeah. And I wish there was I guess a larger market for what we're doing to get our images into, a lot of those books that have the papers, because you know I think the macro photography aspect of it adds a lot to any book. I with this book I didn't go for, say, care instructions and stuff like that. I did the basic descriptions for the animals that you're seeing, and a lot of that was geared more towards not a keeper, but just somebody off the street that if they pick it up, they want to know a little bit more. They want to enjoy the photos. Uh, it might spark a little bit of interest for them. cause them to maybe delve into the whole keeping aspect of what this is and the hobby. So
Yeah.
that was kind of my thing. So I didn't really get too far into the descriptions of each. I just wanted to make it as basic as I could. I didn't want to overwhelm somebody early on. You know what I mean?
Oh, totally. Yeah. And I think you did that well. Like it has the scientific name and a little bit of information about him, but if you're not, you don't really need much more than that. I mean, because it's really about enjoying the images and the beauty of these
Yeah,
specimens. It's not a scientific, it's not a science book, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's a
yeah,
macro
yeah,
photography book with, and poetry. Don't want to leave
yeah,
Jeff out of
yeah,
that. But yeah,
yeah. No, it's different.
yeah, and to kind of go back on what I was saying earlier, just as far as look, like it's like I follow you on Instagram. I really enjoy your photos, but I'm looking at them on my phone, and through that screen and through Instagram's compression algorithm that can sometimes really screw things up. I mean, they're still great looking pictures, but there's something about having printed pictures. It's just a completely different medium. It's like that's a
Yeah,
cool picture, but then you print it out on like some nice photo paper, and it's like wow, that is an amazing image.
yeah. Well,
And
I agree with you. I think holding it in your hand and seeing it on, say, photo paper, or just having it in front of you.
yeah,
Any other version except for digital. I mean, digital is fine for looking at your phone or your computer or something like that, but you get a totally different feel when you have a print in front of you, or you're looking at a print on the wall. It's you. I just think you can enjoy it a little bit more.
yeah, I mean, digital is very disposable. You look at it and you scroll on by, and you probably will never
Yeah,
see it again unless you go to that person's account and like look for it. But
yeah,
when you have an actual print hanging on your wall, or you have a book like this, it's something that you can stare at for minutes, or I mean, I would say hours, but I don't know if I'd stare at it for an hour. I don't have that kind of time, free time. But yeah, and you can, I know where it always is. I can just go grab it, pull it off the shelf, enjoy these photos. Or if I'm talking to somebody about a specific scorpion or something, it'd be a great book to kind of reference. Like, look at that. It just
yeah.
anybody I've shown it to since you sent it to me has been blown away. They're like, wow, that is really. And people that like they don't even like scorpions or spiders. They're just they're not photography fans, but they're like, wow, that is impressive stuff. And not to brag, but my copy is signed by both Jeff Oliver and Gordon Riley. So
Yes, sir.
you guys should be
Yeah.
jealous.
No, yeah, we flew that one around the country for you. So, because I'm in California
Yeah,
and Jeff is in New York. So, um, yeah, so the books came to me, then they went to him, and then they came back, and then they went to you.
yeah,
So
very cool.
yeah, it took some time, to get the dual sign copies. The books do take some travel time, but
Yeah, his book's been
yeah,
on tour.
yeah, it's been everywhere.
Now
It's been
there's
all across the nation.
couple of images. Like I don't want to spoil the book for anybody that's going to go out and buy it. But there are a couple images in here. I really just wanted to talk to you about real quick, mainly
Sure.
just to kind of pick your brain. Hopefully, people will be interested in hearing it. I am doing this very selfishly because I just want to pick your brain about it. But there's one photo in here towards the end. Actually, I think it's the last photo because it says the end. But
Oh,
the scorpion heart, where you've got
yeah.
two different scorpions kind of juxtapositioned with their tails kind of curled up, and it makes a heart. Like how did you get that photo?
Ah, the tricks of the trade.
Yeah.
Well, to put the keepers' minds at ease, because I know an image like that can stir a lot of controversy. Um, Obviously, they're two different species. The image that you're talking about is it's a brass bright, which is a bright yellow scorpion, and it's also the other scorpion is a Lear Stewardanicis, uh, which is very black.
Hmm.
So the contrasts were great, and it just so happened that I had imaged both of those animals in the same location. Um, those are two separate images, and I put
See,
them together
that's
because, yeah.
yeah, that's kind of what I
So
was wondering. So it's like it
yeah,
looks flawless, And I was like, he either was taking a big risk and kind of I somehow managed. I didn't want to like if that was the case, I didn't want you to like give away your wrangling secrets. But I was like, I wonder if it's
No,
photoshopped. Like if
no,
he kind of layered them.
yeah, and I'm good. I'm not that good with wrangling, and especially and you're right. And the reason why I openly speak about that image is because it's very important for people to understand that those animals were not in jeopardy, and they weren't put together for any length of time where they could possibly fight. In fact, they never saw each other on
Yeah.
the same stage. Um, so that's why I have no issue explaining that image. But that was an image that I created for my lady, and
Oh,
so I call it the scorpion heart, and that image is for Eva. And it just so happened that both of those subjects were taken on the same stage, and it seemed too perfect. So when I was looking at it, I was like, wow, I could just layer these and it'll turn out pretty well. And it did. I think it worked out well. So
extremely well. I mean, if I didn't know anything about photography or scorpions, I would think those scorpions were kind of intertwined together. Like you got claws going behind legs, and it's everything about the photo. Looking at it to me is like that's a real, like he caught that in like that instance in reality. Like it doesn't lend itself to
well,
looking
well,
photoshopped.
well, well. In a sense, it was. It's just a question of time.
Yeah,
So both of those two subjects were on that stage in the same position, but just at different times. So, I just took the times and put them together. There's a lot to be said about macro photography, or any photography for that matter. There's a certain element of optical illusion to it. So, while most images you can be certain that what you're seeing is true to your eye, there's certain aspects of it that might not necessarily be true. And especially in this case with this image, where you've got two animals that were on the same stage at two very different times, but just happen to coalesce, if you will. Um, it Don't ask me how I came about it, because I was thumbing through thousands and thousands of images, and it just struck me. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I got lucky with it.
Yeah, it's an amazing photo. I really like that one. And it blows my mind. Like I remember it standing out to me when I was looking at the PDF version, and that was like the first thing I was looking for when I got the real book. I was like, I got to see this thing in person. It was very cool. I mean, but I'm not trying to like sell the book short. I mean, it's packed full of amazing photos. That one is just one of the ones that I thought was exceptionally cool, just as far as the composition went. Just because it had two different species of scorpion in such close proximity. I was just like, I gotta figure that out. Another one
Yeah, I
that
mean,
that
because
really stood out to
you
me.
know,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, because I was going to say, even their legs are intertwined, just so
Yeah,
it's kind of like, they're kind of stepping into each other's areas, so it's kind of like a very unique image.
yeah. And you captured another, and this is another scorpion, but the P Maximus, a gravid female that you can actually see the embryos inside.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
like that's an impressive image. How were you able to? I mean, does it just look that way to the eye, or did you have to use some kind of like special lighting to kind of really bring that out?
No, believe it or not, if you get down and you bring your view to more of a, I guess, a ladder, more of a, if you get on the same level with the subject, you can see them a lot easier. And it becomes a little bit more evident through the side membranes. Um, so it's all based on your angle. That image would look the same to the human eye. You just have to change your level and change your angle of how you view it, and then you'd be able to see them. I didn't do anything trick with that one,
Yeah.
but yeah, she was. Yeah, that was probably about 2 weeks out from her giving birth.
Yeah, I've had some Florida bark scorpions that were gravid, and I could kind of see the embryos, but anytime I tried to photograph it, I just wasn't able to really get it to where you could see it. So I was like, That's why I was very
Yeah.
impressed.
Thanks. Yeah, no, it's that one took a lot of time. Obviously, it took me a little bit of time to get her to settle down for that, and you know, I like to take a lot of my images with the scorpions at rest. It makes me feel better about the shot. That the subject's not all aggravated and in threat posture, because at that point you're stressing them out.
Yeah.
So I kind of minimize the threat posture pictures that I take, because I mean, nobody wants to be punched in the nose all the time, so um
Yeah, I feel you. But
I
sometimes
kind of
those are
like.
also the most impressive, I mean, because when a
They are,
tarantula
yeah,
gives you a threat pose, that's a
yeah,
unique
yeah.
experience. You don't always get to see, even if you keep
It,
tarantulas. So being able to capture
yeah,
that is sometimes pretty cool. But doing it
yeah, no,
intentionally, I think, is where the line for me
yeah,
at least is.
yeah, no. I never try to intentionally do it. If they happen to rear up or pose up, and I'll capitalize on it. Make no mistake, and I'll take the shot. But but I don't intentionally have the animals do that. It's I think that's more of a torment
Yeah.
personally. I'm kind of like the lay in wait kind of guy. I mean, I might go like a week or 2 weeks before I get a good image. So, I mean, it takes time, and it takes a lot of patience, and that's one of the things that people have to remember with macro photography. You can't rush it, because if you rush it, it's not going to turn out well.
Yeah.
So, you have to be patient. Look at what they give you, and just be on top of it enough to, when they do present that image, man, you just click that shutter and hope for the best. Hope that your technique and everything that you've set up captures what you wanted to capture.
I agree.
So,
That's why I enjoy talking to you so much, because I feel like I can relate to you. It's like, you know, you're talking, I'm just like nod my head, like yes, yes, right on, man. Because that's
I mean, we're both macro guys, and we both do the same thing. So it's like, it's real easy for us to, you know, to understand it. And, I mean, I'm sure there's lots of things that you're doing that I could learn, and I'm sure there's lots of things that I'm doing that you could learn. I mean, it's there's so many different aspects of this field, and I'm speaking only of macro photography. But there's so many different things you're always learning.
yeah.
I you're always a student, sometimes a teacher, but never a master.
And I think that's the way it should be with a lot of things in life. Because when you think you're the
Yeah,
master, that's when you become complacent and stop, growing and evolving. You're like, I got this. Like,
yeah, yeah.
and
And at that point, yeah, it just doesn't become fun anymore. It's
yeah, and I get frustrated sometimes, because I do a lot more video than photography, and there's sometimes getting that footage, like, because like I was saying, like, I don't know if it matters in the grand scheme of things, but for me, I've got to have like kind of my own moral compass when I'm working with these animals, because like, I don't want to, like you were mentioning earlier, I don't want to stress them out needlessly, but I also really want to get some good footage of them.
yeah,
One, just for good content for the video, but also because I think that it's important to get that out in the world so that people can see a different side to a lot of these animals that they're scared of. You could see their beauty, and you see them moving, and I don't know. It's just something. At least for me, I'm just more of a visual kind of person, but I gleam a lot off that, and kind of develop an understanding when I can see these things, and not be in a threatening, scary way. Which is your
no,
your
you
photography
and
does well.
yeah, and you're exactly right. I mean, and that's what we as macro photographers try to convey to people is, I mean, you could be scared of these things, and there are lots of people that are. I've had many people approach me and say, I've always been scared of spiders, but your imagery kind of has reduced that down to where I can tolerate them now, or they understand that jumping spiders do occur in people's houses,
Yeah.
um, and that they're beneficial, that they take and eat mosquitoes and flies and all the little nasties that we don't like. Um, people can learn to respect and not vilify arachnids for what, and see them for the beauty that they are. Especially with the photographs. I mean, it gives them a chance to view that animal from a safe distance where they don't have to worry about anything, but yet they can sit there and they can enjoy the details and see the animal for what it truly is.
Yeah, and why I think this book is great for both people that keep arachnids and people that don't, because it's, if I think a lot of people are scared of spiders and scorpions and stuff, and all they see when they see one in real life are 8 legs and a stinger and claws or fangs. Like
Yeah,
that's what their mind is focusing on, and they're not able, like they're so overcome with the fear or the anxiety, they're not able to see the beauty. But when
yeah.
you have a
Well, I
book
mean,
like this with these high quality
yeah,
photos, that that fear is removed, or at least
yeah.
is short lived, and then you can see beyond that and be like, wow, these are fascinating creatures.
Yeah, and I mean, it removes the fear to where you're not seeing the animal as a blur because, okay, if a person happens to run into a spider, the first thing they do is and they kind of either they take it on a fear factor or well, if it's like me or you, we're probably grabbing our cameras, but you know some people they just immediately get scared and they don't really truly see what they think they see. You know what I mean? So this is a chance and opportunity for people to really see what a jumping spider looks like under high mag, and to see what all the different diverse colors of a scorpion. Or I mean, even, take a look at the that one rainbow lynx spider
Yeah.
that's in the book. That's one of my favorite images.
Oh yeah, it's a beautiful
Um,
one.
yeah, I mean, a lot of people wouldn't realize that a true spider like that, would be so diverse in colorations. I mean, it's called a rainbow lynx for for very good reason. It
Yeah.
it literally for anybody that's listening that hasn't seen one of these things, um, its legs all the way up is like yellow, red, green, blue. I mean, it's every color of the rainbow. It's a gorgeous. It's probably the most beautiful spider as far as colors are concerned, in my honest opinion.
Yeah.
But it's things like that that people can enjoy, and if they were to see it in the wild, it would have just been a blur, and they would have never seen those colors. They would have never enjoyed the animal for what it actually is.
Yeah, and that's both. I mean, it's like two parts. The one is the fear, and they're so the spider's afraid and is trying to get away, and you're afraid. You're trying to get away, and fear kind of blinds the sight in some ways, and it's all blurry. And but it's also the fact that it's still, but it's also these are small spiders, or some of these animals are pretty tiny, especially like the jumping
Yeah,
spiders and stuff. So even if it was you were calm, you wouldn't be able to get your eye close enough to see and focus in to see the detail and the colors and,
yeah,
and the patterns and stuff that macro photography can provide you, which I think is
yeah,
amazing. And
yeah,
what I was getting at to earlier is that I find it frustrating trying to not upset these animals or stress them out needlessly, uh, and people, I think, that they're flipping through Instagram, they see your photos and they spend like 5 seconds, maybe if that, like, oh, that's cool. Hit the like button and they scroll on to the next one. And they don't realize, because they do with my videos. They'll watch a 5-10 minute video and
yeah,
just be like, oh, I hit the like button. I'll leave a comment. That was really cool. And not know that it actually took me like 3 or 4 days of filming, these
yeah,
spiders just to get enough footage for a 10-minute video, or it
yeah,
took
yeah,
you and hours to get a photo that you could, as far as like setting up and then actually photographing and then editing and all that, just for somebody to enjoy for a few seconds and then scroll by. It's like sometimes it feels, I don't know. I don't want to say that people don't appreciate it, but
thankless.
sometimes it's like,
Yeah. Well, no, and you're right. For the most part, people don't understand. I mean, it's like we mentioned stacking earlier, and for those that are listening that don't know what stacking is, so when you're doing macro photography, what you have is you have what's called depth of field, and your depth of field is very, very shallow. And what I mean by that is only certain portions of that image are going to be in focus. So in order to increase your depth of field and make everything in focus, normally what photographers will do with macro photography is they will stack the images. So you might have 10 to 15 to 50 and even into the hundreds of images for one image, and each one gets stacked on top of itself. So all of those fields of view that are in focus come together in one image. Um, Now that's problematic for the macro photographer doing a live insect or a live arachnid, because if one leg, one hair, one pedipalp moves, the stack is ruined. Then you have to start all over. And a lot of people don't realize that you don't notice this stuff until you're putting and aligning these images together, and you're like maybe an hour and a half into developing this image, and you realize that it's a no-go and you have to go back to the drawing board. So there's a lot of different things that are involved here. When you're going for that premium focused, outstanding image, I like to call them a hero shot.
Yeah.
So I call it a hero shot. Everybody wants that hero shot, but they don't understand how much time and effort's really going into it. I mean, in some cases, depending on the edits, it might be 1 or 2 days, just for one single image of something that's maybe no bigger than the head of a pin. So
yeah
it's
and trying to explain that to someone that doesn't take photos sometimes is difficult, because they're used to their camera that is on their phone that does all that stuff automatically, and they appreciate it when they see it, but they don't understand how it's done. Like, wow, that image has got a lot of detail. It's like, well, yeah, it's 50 photos stacked on top of each other, and when
and another reason why we stack images is, okay, so you can increase your f-stop, which is going to give you a bigger depth of field. Okay, so your focus point is going to get bigger. But when you do that, what you're losing is you're losing your sharpness. So that image is going to start looking a little soft on the hairs, maybe the edges of the photo. You're going to start noticing that you've got a level of softness that doesn't necessarily look as good as what it could. So stacking images at a good aperture really kind of like is the moderation between the two. So
and it depends on the lens you're using, because I know each lens kind of has its own aperture sweet spot. It's like f10 or f12 or wherever it is, depending on the lens and the camera situation. But trying to find that and get the best quality you can, and that's kind of one of the differences between photography and videography is that you can hit that sweet spot, stack the images, and get a really good sharp photo. But when you're doing video, you don't have the ability to stack. So it's like you just gotta get the biggest depth of field you can, which usually means the very least amount of lights hitting the sensor as possible. So then you got to, bring in a whole lot of extra light to kind of balance it out. And if you're doing any kind of slow motion, that even makes the image darker. And, it takes a lot of effort and a lot of time. And I sound like I'm complaining. I don't mean to do that, but it's
no. It's tough. Everybody needs to know how tough it is. I mean, and if you were ever able to stack a video, dude, you let me know when you can stack a video, because that would be the most impressive thing I think I've ever seen in my life. So
you just got to talk to the Tarantula and be like, what you just did, I need you to do it exactly the same.
Walk back and then, it's like they're on a runway.
Yeah. Like I was doing those kind of fake nature documentaries, and it had this whole stage kind of built and all the lights and stuff, and I posted a picture of the setup on Instagram, I think, and there were a couple of people in the comments making fun of me, like, why do you have 3 or 4 cameras? Like, it's a little overkill. That's ridiculous. And it's like, no, it's not. Like that's like 4 people filming, like the tarantula's only going to walk across this way one time. So I want to get it from as many possible angles as I can. And it's like conducting an orchestra, trying to make sure the white is balanced and not overexposed, and operating 4 cameras at once is not an easy feat.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I have trouble operating one by myself. So, for you operating 4, hands down, man, that's awesome. I mean, that's why your videos are so good, is because you give so many different angles of the same, that tarantula walking, which, I mean, that's good cinematography right there. I mean, that's just good cinematography. So, I
appreciate it.
Dude, you're doing awesome stuff. Your video is just top notch.
I'd rather have like 2 or 3 people that work with me, though. It'd be much easier. Like, you handle that camera, I'll do this camera.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah,
it wouldn't.
it's a difficult. I don't want to say thankless, but it sometimes it feels that way, kind of thing to get into. You know, whether it's photography or videography, because you're filming or you're taking photos of these creatures that most people don't want anything to do with, and you're spending
Yeah,
hours and hours and days creating this content to put out there, whether it's Instagram or YouTube or Facebook or whatever. It's the
yeah,
you know,
and what it amounts to is one like.
yeah,
One like. I mean, it's like, okay, well, I mean, I get that. I don't post things for likes. I mean, I'm past that. I kind of, I post things because my followers like it, and that's why I've stayed within a certain threshold of what I post, and they seem to like the spiders and scorpions that I use as subjects. So
yeah,
I don't deviate very, very far from that. I have tried peds, but peds are crazy.
they're insane.
Yeah, I mean, I can do it. I don't like to do it. I don't think there's anybody that really likes the photograph of centipede, but to me, they're just I mean, for being what they are, they're amazing, amazing predators, amazing animals. Um, but when it comes to photography, they're so erratic.
Yeah, they're
It's
unpredictable.
so hard. Yeah, it's very unpredictable, very erratic, and it's very, very hard to get any kind of like good images of them.
Yeah,
There's one actually in the book where it's like the underside of a Dahani, where you can actually see the modified legs, the forciples, where the venom is actually injected from. And yes, they're modified legs, they're not fangs for those that are listening. But it just so happened that this thing, I was trying to photograph it and it reared up because those things are freaking unpredictable and kind of like they just do their own thing. And I ended up capturing that image. I didn't even know it was on my catalog until I pulled the card and was looking through it, and I was like, oh wow. So sometimes you end up with the luck of the draw.
yeah,
So
yeah. It's an impressive photo. I got a little bit of footage of, I just have a centipede, one of the Sonoran desert centipedes, and
yeah,
that thing's just he's just so crazy. And essentially, like I used the footage in a couple of videos, just essentially when I refer to a centipede, it's like, oh, there's my centipede footage, and a couple
yeah,
people have been like, that's really impressive, and it's like I essentially took the catch cup off, already had the camera focused, and just filmed it in slow motion running away. It's like
yeah,
20 seconds of footage because it's, slowed down to like 20%. In real life, it
yeah.
was like it moved from one side to the other in a matter of seconds. It's just like this. Pew!
Oh yeah.
So I
I
couldn't
mean, they're
imagine
so
photographing them.
well. Well, when that Dahani reared up on me, I was trying to photograph it, and it happened to go up and over the barrier, and next thing you know, I'm chasing this like 9-10 inch Dahani centipede around my photography room.
Oh, jeez.
Which I mean, at that point, I'm like, okay, um, this is a little bit much. I mean, now that's not to say that I haven't had stuff to get away from me while I'm trying to photograph it before, but it's different when it's a 9 or 10 inch Dahani centipede that's incredibly venomous, and it's considered medically significant. And now I'm chasing this thing around the room, and I'm like, oh man, I've got barriers on my room, so nothing can get underneath the doors. It's very, very well sealed up, well thought out, and that's a scary thing. I mean,
Yeah.
because here I am, chasing this thing around the room, and I'm like, okay, well, I got to keep eyes on it because if I don't, it's gone. I'm going to be finding this thing like 3 months from now, and I might not be too happy when I do find it. So,
It'll
but
find you.
I exactly that's what I'm getting at. So that kind of I was like, oh, okay, this is a little bit much for me with the peds. I don't mind shooting them, but I prefer not to. It's just it's too much of a liability. They're too erratic, and it's yeah, not the easiest. Now
No.
there is a photographer that does really, really great centipede shots, and his name I'm sure you've seen him, is Jonas Schroep. He does some amazing centipede photography,
I'm not.
and
Doesn't ring a
yeah,
bell.
I'll have to send you a link to his Instagram, but yeah, he does these amazing, amazing images. And obviously a lot of what he does is like single captures, but they're just very, very well done. It's obvious that he knows his camera, and and he knows the animals because he gets them in like perfect spots. So
Very
not
cool.
me. I don't have that kind of talent. Not me. I'm a, I could be a scorpion whisperer, or or a jumping spider whisperer, but centipedes, they're a little outside my wheelhouse.
Well, you got some good photos of tarantulas too. Don't forget those.
Yeah, yeah. I had a few. Over the years, I've had like, Caribbean versicolors, and I've had like different species. Right now I've got a fire lake, and I love my fire lake. That's yeah, she's awesome. Um, I don't photograph her much because I like to leave her alone. She likes to kick
Yeah.
hairs at me.
Oh
So,
yeah.
and yeah, and I get real allergic to irritating hairs. So I'm like, okay, hon, I'll just leave her alone.
Yep.
Here's
I
a
feel
cricket.
you.
Don't kick hairs at me. So,
Yeah, those hairs are brutal, and that's one of the
uh,
issues I have filming tarantulas a lot. Is just during the process with the lighting and the cameras moving around and stuff. Sometimes
yeah,
that's enough to get them to kick the hairs, and then they're on the table, and I gotta be careful. I had an issue where I set my camera down, not thinking, into like a bunch of hair that it was actually my Brachypelma bamie, the Mexican fire lake had kicked off, and I didn't even
yeah.
think about it. And I picked the camera up, started taking some more footage, filming some more footage, and my finger started itching. I'm like, how did this? I'm like, oh Jesus,
Oh
there's
yeah.
urticating
Well,
hair
dude,
all over my camera and
I
lens
had,
now.
I had her on the platform one time, right? And I was photographing her, and everything was fine, right? She turns around out of nowhere. You know how they do like that happy dance when they get like a cricket.
Yeah.
They kind of turn their bodies around. Well, she turned 180 degrees and just started kicking hairs. I ended up with those like hairs on my face.
Oh,
You
jeez.
know, yeah, and I mean, because I was real close with the macro camera, so I got them on the left side of my face and down my neck, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to put her away. We're done with this, and
Yeah.
from now on, you're just going to be a friend of mine. You're not going to be a photography subject.
Yeah.
So yeah, because clearly she wasn't having it, and I found out later that I wasn't having it either. So
Yeah. I got a T Sturmy that's like that. Like she'll be out and about, and I'll, get my camera, set up a tripod, have everything go, hit that record button, put a little light on her, and then she will just spin around and kick hairs at me immediately. It's like, come on,
yeah,
lady.
yeah.
Now I got to leave
Well,
the entire room for hours.
right now, conversely, I don't know if you have you ever seen a Parabuthus transvalcus?
No.
Okay, so there's a certain genus of scorpions or Parabuthus species. They're notorious for flicking or spitting venom. And sometimes these things, when they get really, really aggravated, what they'll do is they'll spit or flick venom at you like in copious amounts. And yeah, I've got a couple images where this thing, just soaked my lens. And the only thing that saved my eyes was the fact that the camera was in front of my face. But I mean, I was only maybe a foot and a half away from the scorpion,
Yeah.
and this thing's flicking venom, and I literally had to wipe off the lens because it covered my lens pretty good.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was accurate enough to get my lens.
Yeah.
So which that in itself was impressive to me. So
Yeah. Anytime I see a scorpion like that, usually that they come with a warning from the dealer, and I'm like, yeah, I don't think I'm ready to take that one on yet. I had somebody send me a
yeah,
Death Stalker once, and I didn't ask for it. They just kind of threw it into it. They were like, "Hey, I want to send you some stuff," and there was a Death Stalker in there. I was like, "This isn't cool." Unfortunately, the
yeah,
one they
no,
sent me was already pretty close to death. Because I think they were keeping it a
oh
little too
wow,
humid, so it didn't
uh,
last very long. But it was
yeah,
still, I was
that
pretty nervous.
Yeah, well, that I mean that's a big problem with the hobby. I think is misidentification and people throwing things in, and that's something that needs to really really be tightened up a little bit with the hobby. Is a lot of people misidentify Lyriscum quaesteratus and
Yeah.
for other species, and considering how medically significant that scorpion is, that's a dangerous thing, especially when you start talking kids and elderly people. But a normal adult would probably be fine unless they, had a, serious adverse reaction. But no, those are dangerous scorpions that can really, really put a wall upon you. So, you know,
Yeah, I mean, some of the true spiders and some of the scorpions that are pretty hot, pretty medically significant. Like, I feel comfortable enough that I could work with them, I could keep them, but I always have to keep in, the back of my mind. Yeah, I'm also a parent, so I got to take into consideration. I've got a 13-year-old, and it's something I was told very young was, one teenage kid is smart, two teenage kids are dumb. Three kids, three teenage boys, they've got no brain at all, So I always got to
oh
worry that
yeah,
he's going to be at home and have a couple of his friends over. One dare leads to another, and they're pulling out or accidentally knock over an enclosure with a very venomous animal in it that could cause us some pain or some medical issues. So I'd always try to keep that
yeah,
in mind. Like, I love these animals, but even you got a teenager, you can lock it up. They're still going to find a way to get in there if they want. I remember
oh
being
yeah,
when I was a teenager, my parents couldn't hide
oh yeah,
anything from me. So I always try to keep that in mind when I'm deciding which animals to keep. And now we've
yeah.
got a
Well,
3-year-old. I mean, she isn't allowed in the basement at all. So I don't worry about that. But there's always the
yeah,
possibility a cat knocks it over and the animal gets out and somehow escapes the basement and gets in the house. I mean, this is all like extreme worst case scenarios, but
yeah.
I,
But you have to think of it. You have to
yeah,
think of it. Because it would be irresponsible not to. I mean, my arachnid room is locked. I've got door dams on the doors, and basically when the room is shut, there's no getting in or out. And basically, whatever's in the room is in the room. Um, and I don't really show a lot of my setup as far as like how I keep, my enclosures, but um, I do what most scorpion keepers do, where they have like a hot box, and that box itself has the enclosures in it, and that is also locked.
yeah,
So there's a couple different things that I do that just enhances the security. Um, obviously earthquake strap, that's a big deal, especially being in California.
oh yeah,
Um, those are things that I've had to you know be able to manipulate or uh, or try to figure out a ways to fend off if we did have an earthquake, which happens often out here, believe it or not.
yeah.
But a small little rattler can just a little shake, and next thing you know, you got enclosures falling. So you got to be secure, you got to be smart about what you do. But like I said, my boxes they're locked, and the enclosures are stacked on top of each other. So I know that all the enclosures down below are obviously shut if everything is sitting perfect.
Hmm.
So, that's just another way for me to, ensure that my enclosures are going to be safe. Everything's closed up, and I can go and lock my room up.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I've had instances where stuff has gotten away from me. Um, I've been lucky. I always happen to find it. Um, but I mean, the stuff that I'm keeping, I mean, there are certain species that I'm keeping that are ridiculously dangerous. Like I don't know if you've ever heard of the Hemiscorpus lepturus. Um, that's an extremely dangerous scorpion that is very, very easily misidentified. Um, and that's not something you want anybody to ever get stung by. So,
Yeah. I've got some androgynous species like the fat tail scorpions. Like they're not the most, but they're the ones that I'm worried about. They're probably the hottest that I think I might have one Hottentotta. I don't remember the species.
yeah,
But
yeah.
still a little squirpling. Those things are taking forever to
Well,
grow. But I keep all
well,
of
there's the,
those, all of them,
yeah,
like you were saying, they're in an enclosure, and then that's inside of like essentially like a really large enclosure that's also locked. Like
yeah.
partially because I want it to be warmer, but also if for any reason they ever escape that enclosure, now they've got a second enclosure to try to escape out of.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, safety's paramount, and I think the responsible keepers, that's how we generally keep our rooms. And when you add in a bunch of photography gear and you know electrical cords and stuff, that it's very easy for these invertebrates to hide, and yeah, it can be very, very interesting. when you try to do a photo shoot with them.
Yeah, that's one
So
of the issues I run into a lot down here. Is that, like everything is in this one room. So I got all the enclosures. I got the little set, the lights, the cameras, the mics, the books, the computer, the desk. Like all this
yeah,
stuff. So it's like, yeah, only the tarantulas and scorpions and snakes are in here, and they can't really get out if they were to escape. But there are so many places for them to hide under tables and chairs and camera bags and all this other kind of gear. That's why
oh yeah,
one of the things I'm working towards right now is trying to, make enough money off the content that I can afford to rent a space and just move everything. Like I'd really like to just have a studio outside of my house that I could keep the
yeah, that'd be
animals
great.
and have like a room just for camera equipment and lights and everything to be stored, and then a section or an area that is just for filming or photographing, and kind of keep them all separate in case something were to escape. It wouldn't, like the studio would have nothing in it but the lights and cameras and whatever the
Right?
table is. So it would be easy
Yeah.
to find them and capture them, because I've been lucky so far. I haven't had anybody get away and hide somewhere. I did have one. It was a Pteronoculus. It wasn't the Moranus. It was. I can probably look at the enclosure real quick. What are you? Lapa Lapa? That doesn't sound right. Lapa Lala, something
You're,
like that. Lapala. it's a, it's essentially an OBT, but they're more of well, right now it's a juvenile, so it's more of like a blackish gray color. And
oh, so orange bitey thing.
yeah, and it got off the table and took off
Oh,
across the
jeez.
the carpet and went right up to like where the wall meets the carpet, and it was pulled up like it had come off its tack just enough it could squeeze its body down in there. And I was like, it
Oh,
is
wow.
in the walls, or it's like in the foundation of the house or under the carpet. Like I can't get to it. I don't know what to do. So I just locked up the room. I was like, I'll come back at night. Maybe I can catch it out. And I went and
Yeah.
checked that spot, and where I had pulled the carpet up a little bit to try and get it, and realized like that's just the the foundation. It must have like gotten to a crack or something. I noticed that
Wow.
around the carpet now had a funnel web built, and I was like, oh, it's
Oh,
right there. There's nowhere for it to go. It's just essentially hiding under the carpet where I couldn't see it, which was a little
oh,
concerning because
wow.
I put my fingers there and ripped it up, so I could I could have had my fingers
Yeah.
millimeters from its mouth. But I was able to see the webbing and get a little paintbrush and push on the other end, and it came running out right to the catch cup, and I was like, "Whew, crisis
Oh,
averted."
wow.
But
Oh, you got lucky. You
yeah,
got lucky.
but that was what
No, I
really
had a
solidified that I need to get a space dedicated,
yeah,
clutter
and
free,
I
where
and
I
I,
don't have to worry about this.
besides that, the Dahani that got away from me, I had a Centroides bicolor adult female that was gravid, and I'm trying to photograph her because I wanted to show how thick she was getting, and I wanted to show like the different levels of you know where they go from like not gravid, gravid, showing embryos and so forth. Um, but she was pretty well gravid, and and I was photoing her, and next thing I know, she takes off and she bolts, and I couldn't find her. And I found her 2 days later in a camera bag.
Oh,
She was
geez.
actually in like I have a teleconverter that I sometimes use with my 100 millimeter,
Yeah.
and yeah, she was in the teleconverter bag, just kind of hanging out. And yeah, I got lucky with that one. So because I found her and she actually gave birth like maybe a week or two later. So
That's awesome.
and yeah,
It would
yeah.
have been
So
a
it
little
was
stressful. That reminds me of
yeah, but
there's this YouTube creator. It's like I don't know if they're husband and wife, boyfriend, girlfriend. It's alternative inverts. They're out in the UK, and they had, I don't remember the species, but it was an old world fossorial, I believe, that escaped, and they couldn't find it. And then like a week later, they're going to one of the invert expos they have out there and in the UK, and they're driving there, and it crawled out of her purse or something like that in the car,
oh
and
geez.
he grabbed like a cup and capture it. I was like, that's insane.
uh,
Well, I mean, I'm glad you found it, but that's an unfortunate way to find it while you're driving on the interstate. But
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. That's probably the scariest way to find something. That's
yeah,
crazy. But no, I've been lucky, and I really, really knock on wood. It's every time I take something out, I always consider myself lucky to even get an image, but I'm twice as lucky if I can get them back in their enclosure and everything's good. So
Yeah.
It's and that's the biggest thing for me is like when I'm photographing something, I really want to make sure that the animal's good, I'm good, and everything goes back. And I mean, I even go as far as like I'll give them a little cricket after the fact. So a lot of what I photograph, it's kind of funny. The scorpions, believe it or not, can be conditioned to raise their claws. And as soon as I open the hot box, their claws go up in the air because they're ready for their cricket. They know as soon when that box opens up that they're going to be fed. So usually right after a photo shoot, I'll go ahead and feed them up, and so a lot of my stuff kind of sits pretty now, but I think a lot of it has to be maybe a small form of conditioning.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
Well, I mean, that's if that's even possible. I'm just going by what I've seen, but
I feel you.
every time I open up,
anecdotal, but
yeah.
But I'm there with you. I can't think of a scorpion that does that. But I do have a how do you say it, a titty miss or something like that. I'm real bad with scientific names, especially with scorpions. But I got one of those that she's always hiding. But sometimes when I'll take the lid off and I'll spray, because the moss, I like mist it, kind of get the humidity up. Anytime I do that, she comes out. She's like, "Oh, it's the guy that feeds me," And it's like I don't think she's having that conscious thought, but I feel like there's a conditioned kind of reaction that she knows. Oh, it's getting sprayed. That means a cricket's about to fall down. I need to get ready and snatch that up.
Exactly. So, I mean, it's the most basic form of conditioning, basically. But I have noticed it with scorpions that as soon as I open the hot box, their claws go up in the air and they're waiting. So it's it's almost like they're waiting for the cricket to fall out of the sky.
Yeah,
kind of interesting.
And I don't think she does that defensively, because if I'm doing anything else in there, if I'm just filling up a water dish or moving stuff around or something, she's more she just runs and hides. It's only when I missed that she like kind of comes out, like she's looking for the prey.
Well, it sounds like the misting is the cue. So she probably senses the raise in humidity, and at that point has already associated that with the cricket being dropped in.
Yeah, but you got to be careful saying that stuff, because some people get really upset. Like you're anamorphizing, or whatever that anamorphizing. I can never say that word.
Well, what do they call it? Antamorphic qualities or something like that. Anthropomorphic qualities. I don't know. I can't pronounce it.
We should just change the name of this podcast to pronouncing fancy words poorly.
Yeah, large words. So, this is the name of the podcast is going to be pronouncing large Latin words poorly. So
I love it when people leave a comment on my videos like, "That's not how you say that word." I'm like, "You know how to speak Latin? Like, this dead language, you know how to pronounce it correctly?"
Yeah, I'm sure I'll probably get a couple people. Hey, no, you didn't say that properly. Well, I'm a photographer. I mean, it's got a Latin name. It knows its Latin name. Yeah. I don't know how to pronounce it. I mean, I could barely speak English, let alone
I feel you.
Latin. So.
And I've been doing this long enough that I know it doesn't matter. Like, you're never going to make anybody happy. Like, the Brachypelma bamey is one. Grammostola pulchripes. It's like, is it pulchripes? Is it pulchripes? Is it, it's like, so like I'll say it one way and then I'll get a bunch of comments like, you mispronounced it. It's pronounced this way, and they'll spell it out phonetically. I'll make another video where I refer to that species and I'll make sure that I use that pronunciation. And inevitably there's a bunch of comments. No, that's not how you say it, correctly in Latin. It's this way. It's like, okay, so you guys need to get together and figure this out and then get back to me, because I don't speak. I took Latin in high school and I feel like I remembered some things, but apparently not as much as I had as I think I did.
Well, I mean, when I was younger, I used to know all the dinosaurs' Latin names, and I used to be able to come across with that. And my dad always just thought it was amazing. Yeah. But now that I've gotten older, it's like the scorpions. I see it and I can read it, right? But I can't say it. So it's like I know what it is, and I can see it, and I can say it, or I can read it and think it. But when I go to pronounce it, it never comes out right. So I mean,
But I think that's the important aspect of it, though, is that it's a label to identify a species. So as long as you can read it and know what it's referring to, like, that's what's important. The pronunciation is that's all kind of conjecture, really. It's like, what I'm trying to say. Get over it.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, at that point, it's like, okay, well, I mean, what if I had a speech impediment? What if I have a little lisp or something? I don't know. I mean, maybe I
Yeah.
do. It's not going to come out perfect. So,
I just tell people like, hey, I'm a hillbilly from West Virginia. We've got an accent. That's all it is.
right on, right on.
It's the Appalachian pronunciation of Latin. Relax.
The new pronunciation of the Latin term.
But yeah, but the book is Venomous Words, and your photography, Jeff Oliver's poetry, and it's available on Amazon. You said, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, are there
Yeah, go
different
ahead.
versions of the book, or is it? Can you like what's available for sale?
Okay, so basically the one that you got, I went ahead and I sent you the collector edition hardcover.
I appreciate that.
That one's that one's got the really really nice 100 pound luster paper. Obviously, it's a hardcover. The paper makes the images color a little bit more vibrant. There's also a standard hardcover that's available and a soft cover. Now, both the standard hardcover and the soft cover both have 80-pound paper, and it's high quality photo paper. So make no mistake, I pulled out all the stops with it. But in all actuality, those are amazing too. Unless you're a photo nut, you're not really going to notice the difference in quality when it comes to 80-pound, 100-pound. A macro photographer like myself or yourself, you would be able to tell the difference between, say, 80-pound, 100-pound.
Mhm.
That's because we look for certain other details that average person doesn't look for. But yeah, the standard hardcover, soft cover look great. The collector's edition's phenomenal. Those are all available on Amazon. Now, when you go to Amazon, ironically enough, because there's two hardcover versions, you'll see two different links. So the standard hardcover and the soft cover together, and then the collector's edition is a standalone, just because Amazon couldn't differentiate between one hardcover or the other. So
Yeah, I just pulled it up while you were talking. I tried to get an idea. So I'm looking at Venomous Words hardcover. So it's got a hardcover and a paperback version.
yeah, that's the standard hardcover and soft cover.
I was just kind of scrolling down to see. Sometimes they'll link other products like this, and I was like, well, maybe it'll have the collector's edition link there. But for whatever reason, they don't. They were not on their game. But it's got a
Yeah,
lot of 5-star reviews, a lot of glowing testimonials. Like people seem very, very excited about this.
yeah, it's done well so far. It really has. So it's we've been really really good with the reviews, and thank everybody for the 5-star reviews. And I really appreciate it. And I'm glad that people enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm going to leave my own 5-star review once we're done because
Well, thank
this
you,
is
sir.
very impressive. And we were talking earlier. I would like to, and I don't know exactly how I'm going to do this because last time last time I did a giveaway, it was I can't think of any other word that's appropriate other than clusterfuck because it was just insane. Like I announced it on YouTube, and then just it was like an army of scam bots that descended into the comments and started ripping people off.
Oh wow.
Like using
Wow.
my my profile image and stuff like that, and slightly changing the name and telling them, hey, you've been selected as the winner. Send me your information on WhatsApp, and you know what I mean. Like they're trying to steal their Facebook accounts or YouTube accounts or bank information. It's like, I mean, I would say 98% of the people were like, that's obviously not Richard. Like that's a WhatsApp number. And,
Yeah.
you look at it, give it a second look and you're like, oh, that's not even his profile name. It's just like the image. But yeah, there were a few people that just got excited and saw the image and was like, oh, I won. Here's all my information. It's like, no, don't trust people on the internet. I said I would
Oh
not
yeah.
contact you in the comments. Then,
Yeah. No.
so I got to
That's
figure out a
crazy.
way to do it safely. But I'm going to announce like on Instagram or YouTube or something like that. Some way, I mean, I'll probably just have to like do the giveaway on my website. That way I have control over it and don't have to worry about scammers. But I'm going to give away, I'm going to buy one of your books just to give it away to somebody. So if you're listening,
Oh, thank you.
you're in on the secret beforehand. So keep an eye out for that announcement because I think that'll be really a cool little prize to give away to somebody that they would appreciate. And or you could just go to Amazon and buy it yourself because they are listed, they are for sale, and I highly recommend it for whatever that's worth. Like I really enjoy my copy. That's why I want to give one away because you gave this one to me for free and you signed it, and I appreciate it. But Had you not, I would have bought one anyways. So I'll just take the money I was going to spend to buy one, and I'll give it to somebody else. So I
Oh
think,
well, good. Well, thanks, Richard. I appreciate it, man. I really appreciate you, supporting us with this, and it's really great when you see people in the community just supporting each other, and I think that's really how we can make this community even bigger and better. The tarantula community is huge, and we definitely like to see the scorpion community get as big and have as many people enjoy that as well. So,
I agree. And
yeah,
and then maybe one day we'll be as big as like the ball python community with a leopard gecko
I know,
community or
right?
something.
Right. Yeah.
But I really
Uh,
appreciate what you guys are doing here, and I don't want to say like more than anybody else that creates content, but this in particular, it's I appreciate the fact that it's not like a scientific book, that's going straight to people that keep tarantulas or keep scorpions, or you know what I mean. It's not like a reference book. This is art, it's beautiful
yeah.
lyrics, beautiful poetry,
Well,
beautiful
I
photography.
mean,
It
what we really,
transcends the hobby, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
yeah, and what we were really trying to do is like step out of the box a little bit with it. So, and I'm glad that you see it that way, because for us, I didn't want to get overly scientific, because a new keeper is not going to be, is going to be overwhelmed with that. So, what I wanted to do is I kind of wanted to transcend it, like you said, and kind of step out of the box and enter a new area that, you know, we're not part of. And the writing world just seemed to be the perfect place for it, because, they always say an image is worth 1,000 words.
Yeah.
Well, now you got the image, and now you got some words behind it, and now you've got a little bit of feeling.
Yeah.
So there's a multitude of different ways of how you can take this book and how you can approach what you're actually seeing. So, I mean, you could take it from a keeper aspect and really enjoy the species for what they are. You
Mhm.
can take it from a non-keeper aspect and kind of dive into the whole art of macro photography and seeing some of these amazing creatures and getting past your fear. There's a multitude of different ways of how you can actually, enjoy this book.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
and
if you're into like the
and
kind of
even
dark poetry, it's perfect for you. If you're
yeah,
into the images, it's perfect for you. If you like both,
yeah,
it's
yeah. Try to be diverse with it, and obviously the premonition of the images. What I was going for there was to keep the reader, engaged and make them want to turn the page to see that next image.
yeah.
So that was kind of a new thing, and I just came up with the whole idea, and it just seemed to fit. And I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to ghost these images and see if that kind of like engages the readers. And
Yeah.
so far so good. It's done well, and everybody seems to have liked it. I mean, there's some amazing collaborations in there, and that's one of the things that I mean, obviously, if Jeff was here with us today, he'd be able to tell you guys about. But I mean, Joe Lansdale is in there. I mean, he's iconic. He's an
Yeah.
iconic horror writer. I mean, if you're in the writing world, the horror world, he's iconic, and he's the collaborator that I put with the Scorpion Heart. So that's his poem went with that image,
Very
and
cool.
but there's some amazing people, and in that book that collaborated with us, you know also, and I know Jeff would probably want me to go over this, but on the sides of the flap, have you ever seen that movie Bird Box?
Bird Box. I
Yeah,
feel
with
like I
Sandra
have.
Bullock.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I have.
Yeah. So the author to that movie Bird Box that was on Netflix, he actually did a blurb for us. So he actually did a blurb that's right there on the jacket of the book, and I mean it's really impressive. He was very impressed with the book. He loved it, and yeah, I'm very thankful for him doing a blurb. And we had the president of the Horror Writers Association do a blurb for us too. And yeah, no, we've been very, very grateful for all the help that we've gotten.
Yeah. That's very cool. It's a really good book. I mean, I feel like we're probably around the same age. Do you remember the musician Beck, big in the
Oh yeah,
90s? Yeah. I heard
yeah,
someone describe him once, or kind of give like I don't even know what the right word is, but the review of Beck was that he creates genres as he transcends them. And I kind of
yeah,
feel like that's what you guys have done here. You created a genre, and then transcended it, like far surpassed what it could have been. So I mean, you guys really knocked this one out of the park. And now that I say that, I
Thanks,
don't
man.
think that was actually a review. I think that was from a Futurama episode, but it still
I mean,
applies.
Beck is a very, very interesting artist. I mean, it's his music is just, it's different, and I totally get it. And you know what? And you're right. And thank you for that. I take it as a compliment because, that's where I was trying to go with this thing. Is I wanted to break the norm of just being a keeper, coming up with a book, that is just scorpions or tarantulas or centipedes. I wanted to engage a different kind of audience and see if I can, spin up the interest, if you will, outside of the community. I mean, that's how we grow. So if you can spin up interest outside of the community, get some people that are interested in seeing some of these creatures, and who knows, they might want to keep them. Maybe they'll get past their fears.
I feel you, because I try to do something similar. Like people will, they'll send me nasty messages or sometimes complimentary messages. Like, well, you're an informative source. Is where we go for education, and it's like I don't see myself as an educator. Like there are people like Tom Moran and guys out there that put out strictly educational content. Somebody referred to it as edutainment. I like that, but the way I see myself is I'm essentially making sports car commercials for tarantulas. Like I'm trying to make them look cool and sexy, and
which is amazing, because you know what? That's what the hobby needs. Every hobby needs somebody that's going to take it to the next level, and you, my friend, do that. So, it's you got to step outside the box. You're trying to do something new and creative, and get away from the stale world of just the monotony of
like I want to make content that is appealing to people in the community, but also is going to be appealing to people outside of the community, and hopefully bring them in and learn more, and maybe then start keeping, and then see all these other people that are making content and taking photos, and kind of introduce them to the world. So like I want to make stuff that's people that you keep these animals will appreciate, but will also be appealing to those outside the hobby. And I think that your book has done that phenomenally, like probably better than I have been able to do. So, I'm very excited.
I don't know about that. You've got a hell of a following, and you do some amazing work. And I love your content. And I mean, we're both essentially doing the same thing. We're just attacking it from different sides. So, and you're right. I think we have the opportunity as a creator to bring other people into the fold, like we are. And that's very, very important for, keeping the community going, number one. But I don't know how many times I've had people contact me, though, after seeing an image of a jumping spider, and they've been scared of spiders all their life. And now they're keeping jumping spiders. I mean, that's an amazing thing.
Yeah.
When you can break the barriers of fear like that, with certain people, and they can finally see these animals for what they are, and they're not so vilified anymore. It becomes a different thing. And, like my lady, for instance, she never was into spiders. She's not into scorpions, preferably she stays away from all that stuff. And that's, hey, rightly so. But she now has a fondness for like jumping spiders. I mean, she really truly has a fondness for jumping spiders now. And it's changed the way she thinks about them. And it's, when you break away from that fear, you can change your thinking a little bit. And I think that means the world.
I agree. Yeah, I just released, I guess, a few weeks ago, I put out a video. It was about what the difference is between a tarantula and a spider. And I knew probably a lot of people that kept tarantulas knew that, but it was more geared to new keepers and people outside of the hobby. Because, sometimes I get frustrated when people are referring to wolf spiders or something like that as a tarantula. And it's, because, just where I live, we got a lot of wolf spiders, and constantly people that I barely know are sending me like pictures, like either through text or Facebook or something, like, what is this tarantula? I'm like, where did you find that? You're back. It's not a tarantula. So I was like, I'll make a video explaining the differences. And YouTube is a weird mystical beast. And for whatever reason, the video performed well enough among my subscribers and people that normally watch the video that it decided, and it does this every year or so. It's like, I'm going to take this video and we're going to push it out to a whole bunch of people that have never seen your stuff and don't, so I'm getting all these comments from people that are like, why is YouTube recommending this video? Why am I watching? I have never been interested in spiders or tarantulas. It came up and I clicked on it, but it's some people are like, this is just terrifying, I don't want to watch it, but I do want to take the time to leave a comment and tell you that it's scary. But there
Yeah.
overwhelmingly it's people that are like, I was scared of spiders, I saw this video, now I'm kind of fascinated and interested, and I'm going to watch
Yeah.
more. And it's like, exactly like that. That's been the goal the entire time. So I'm glad that it's coming to fruition, and I'm glad that you guys have put out this book, because I think it's going to, I'm reaching people on YouTube. You guys are going to be reaching people in the literary world, people that are into poetry or people that are into macro photography, and kind of tempt them to come into this realm as well. So, bravo to you guys. You guys did an amazing job. And
well, thank you. One of the things that just recently dropped was, we just recently had a review done by Cemetery Dance. So I know people probably don't know what Cemetery Dance is, but that's a huge horror review site. It's like number one in the world, I think. And it's it's done by Richard Chismar. And it's, for us to get that review, that was amazing. It was a good review, and it came down from Cemetery Dance. I mean, that's like the largest horror review site you can be at. And so I'm just amazed that they took the time to actually review this book. So yeah, I'm over my head with this, as far as where this is going. So yeah, it's nice to reach those different audiences, and hopefully it inspires people and drums up a little interest.
Yeah, definitely. And I got really echoey all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So the book is Venomous Words by Jeff Oliver and Macro Photography by Gordon Riley. This is volume 1, which to me means that there's going to be multiple volumes coming out in the future. So I'm excited about that. And it's available on Amazon. Yeah, I look forward to that. So I'll put a link down below in the show notes. If you're listening to this podcast, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll have it down below in the description as well. And this, it's by the time this comes out, I will have figured out how to do the giveaway. So there will be information on how you can win a copy of Venomous Words down there as well. It'll probably be a link that'll take you to the website, and you just got to put in your email address or something like that, and we'll draw a winner from there. So if you want to win a copy, be sure to sign up and throw your hat in the ring. Is that how you say it? Throw your name in the hat, or throw your hat in the ring? Yeah, those are two different things.
Yeah, I guess you could do it both ways, but you could throw your name in the hat or put your hat in the ring. But I'll tell you what, since you're doing this giveaway, the winner, once they've won the book, if they want to contact me and send me the book, I'll sign it for them.
There you go.
Yeah. So there's that too.
I think that would be awesome. Like I'll just have the book shipped to you, and you sign it, and I'll provide a shipping label or whatever, and so you can send it off to the winner. That would be.
Yeah. I'll even see if I can get Jeff involved in it. So.
No, you can't do that. I need to have the only copy that's dual signed.
Well, it takes it takes a bunch. It takes a lot of legwork to get the dual signed ones. So yeah, but yeah, you probably end up with my signature. You can
just forge his, and that way, if these are worth millions of dollars in the future, I can be like, well, that one's a fake. I know it. Compare I've actually got just real photograph or autograph.
Well. Okay, so here's what we did, and we didn't, we haven't told anybody what we did. Okay, so there's one copy that's a dual signature, and it's all black ink from both of us, right? And that went to my father, and that was the first book that ever was produced. So that's dual signed in black ink. All the other ones you'll notice is dual signed in blue ink. So we wanted to make a little bit of a separation with, like, say, the books that we were given out versus the ones,
Yeah. I feel you.
So
and I'm just kidding. Like, if you want Jeff to sign it, that's totally fine. I was just joking.
the thing is that's really hard to do, and shipping it around can probably that can be kind of problematic if say something gets damaged. So we'll see what happens. But whoever wins, they can contact me, and we can go from there and do it.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Now what would be very impressive, is if somebody had all 3 signatures, but that would entail the book going from say California to New York to Australia,
Oh,
because
wow.
the gentleman that actually designed, well, so it was my image on the cover, right? But the gentleman that actually did a lot of the design for the cover and the flaps and a lot of the interior design of that book was done by Dan Verkes, and he's amazing. So his name is right there too, but him being in Australia, it's like very, very hard to get a signature there. So
Yeah. Hey, you'll have to, if you want that signature, you'll have to contact him and work out shipping yourself. I can't
yeah,
afford to
yeah,
get
which is
a book back
yeah,
and forth to Australia.
no, that's exuberant too. Trust me, when I found that out, just getting, because he got a he got a dual signed book as well. Yeah, it was exuberant to get the book out to Australia for him. So
Yeah, I can
yeah.
imagine. Well, Gordon, I really appreciate you coming on and talking about the book and sharing some insight into your photography and everything. That was very generous of you. So thank you very much.
Well, I appreciate it, Richard, and thanks for having me on. I really appreciate you having me on as a guest, and your videography and photography is top notch. So yeah, I really appreciate just the thought of having me on. It was great. So
Well, thank you. Yeah, and I kind of I've enjoyed doing this without video. It's going to be a lot easier to edit and upload. So I might be doing more podcasts like this in the future. So yeah, thank you for this. And like again, I said again, you can get this book off Amazon. You can find links for it down below in the description. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or anything like that, make sure you're following the podcast. Leave a 5-star review. If you buy a book, be sure to leave a 5-star review on Amazon as well. Help them get the word out there. Because that really helps a lot on Amazon when it comes to literature and stuff. The verified purchases, leaving 5-star reviews really pushes it up. So, help out a fellow keeper in the hobby and macro photographer. I'm sure you would really appreciate that. I don't mean to speak for you, like you're not still here.
Oh, absolutely. No. You know what? I thank everybody that comes to my Instagram and follows me and supports me and keeps me doing what I do. And this is what I do. I do it for everybody. I want people to see things, and I really thank everybody for the support. And yeah, if you do happen to purchase a book, leave me an honest review. Let me know exactly what you think. It means the world to me, and I know it definitely means the world to Jeff too. So yeah, let us know what you think, and yeah, we'll keep pushing them out.
Very cool. And I'll have your Instagram and Jeff's Instagram and Facebook linked down in the description or show notes as well. So you guys can follow him on social media and stay up to date. And that way you will know when volume 2 is coming out, because that's going to be very cool. So yeah, thank you so much, Venom Macro, Gordon Riley. It is awesome having you on the podcast. Hopefully you'll come back and talk again, because technically this is the second time you've done a podcast. The first one we recorded just did not go well. And that was on me. That was all technical issues. I spent hours trying to edit. I'm like, man, I just can't do this. I can't save this. The audio quality is just shot. So
no worries, man.
Thank you for coming back again.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know what? And I enjoy talking macro with you so much that, if the listeners like hearing, macro and what it takes and us going over stuff like that, then, I'd be more than happy to come back again and jump into it with you.
Definitely. Because I feel like we could talk for days just about the different ways to do photo and video and cameras and lights and all that. So yeah, if you guys have enjoyed this, be sure to leave a comments or send us messages. Let us know you'd like to hear more, and we'll definitely record some more podcasts, because I definitely enjoy talking to you, Gordon.
Cool. Same here.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening. We're going to have to wrap this up, and everything's in the description. So follow, like, comment, buy, all that awesome stuff. Help support Jeff and Gordon in this project that they're working on. And thank you all just for listening and sticking around and coming back. It means a lot to me. And yeah, I guess that's enough of me talking. So thank you guys. You all have a great week, and we'll see you next time on the next episode of the Exotic Pet Collective. Goodbye.
See ya. That was good, man.
Right. Yeah. Oops. Stop that. It's just going to do it again. I'll cut all this out.
No, that was good, dude. Yeah, if the listeners are interested in macro and what it takes and really want us to like freaking dive into it together, I'm down, dude. I'll sit there and talk your ear off. So
Yeah, that sounds
you know,
cool.